The first shout came from the back of the cemetery, sharp and cracking through the quiet like a gunshot. "She's not dead!" For a moment, no one moved. Not the priest with his trembling hands folded over the prayer book. Not the black-suited executives standing stiff as gravestones, HAF stones. Not the grieving relatives frozen beside the polished mahogany coffin. The words hung in the cold morning air, absurd and impossible, echoing against rows of marble markers and bare winter trees. Then the shouting came again, closer this time, desperate, hoarse. "She's not dead! Stop the funeral!" "Somebody dead? Stop the funeral!" Heads turned. Murmurs rippled. A gasp escaped someone near the front. The billionaire's funeral. Eleanor Whitmore, titan of industry, philanthropist, and one of the most powerful women in the country, was supposed to be flawless, controlled, unquestioned. Yet now, running down the gravel path between headstones, was a man in a faded orange safety vest, boots caked with mud, breath coming in ragged bursts. His name was Jonah Reed, and until that moment, no one important had ever listened to a word he said. Eleanor Whitmore had been declared dead 3 days earlier. The official story was neat and tragic. Sudden cardiac arrest in her private estate, discovered by her personal physician, Dr. Malcolm Avery. The paperwork was signed. The death certificate issued. The media mourned. Markets trembled. Trembled. Flags at Whitmore Global's headquarters flew at half-staff. The world accepted it because the world always accepted what came wrapped in authority. Jonah Reed had accepted it too, at first. Jonah was 47, divorced, and lived alone in a one-room apartment above a shuttered bakery. He worked nights and early mornings collecting garbage for the city, a job most people pretended not to see. He knew the rhythms of other people's lives by what they threw away. Empty champagne bottles, shredded documents, broken toys, expired medicine. He had learned long ago that the truth often ended up in the trash. 2 nights before the funeral, Jonah's route took him past Whitmore Estate. Normally, the mansion's waste was handled privately, but that night, the private contractor hadn't shown, and the city was called in as backup. Sorrow. Jonah remembered thinking it was strange how quiet the place was. No guards at the gate, no lights blazing in the windows, just darkness and the soft crunch of gravel under his truck's tires. He loaded the sealed black bags like any other night, barely glancing at them until one shifted. Just slightly, Jonah froze. Garbage bags didn't shift on their own. He told himself it was nothing. Wind, settling plastic. His hands shook anyway as he lifted another bag and heard it. A sound. A low, muffled thump. And Jonah dropped the bag. His heart slammed against his ribs. He stood there in the cold, staring at the pile like it might explode. Then he did something he'd never done in 20 years on the job. He tore the bag open. Inside were medical supplies, syringes, IV, tubing. And beneath them, wrapped in thin plastic and soaked with something that smelled sharp and chemical, a hand. Warm, Jonah screamed. The next hours blurred into chaos. Eleanor Whitmore was alive, barely. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow, her pulse weak but unmistakable. So. Jonah called emergency services, ignored the dispatcher's disbelief, and performed clumsy first aid with shaking hands until the ambulance arrived. At the hospital, Jonah was questioned for hours. Police, doctors, lawyers. No one could understand how the world's most closely guarded billionaire ended up in a garbage bag behind her own estate. Dr. Malcolm Avery arrived just before dawn, his face pinched with anger and something darker. "This man is mistaken," Avery said coolly. "A Mrs. is ND." Whitmore was pronounced dead under proper medical supervision. Jonah met his gaze and felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Dead people don't breathe," Jonah said. "Oh, dead people don't grab your wrist when you pull plastic off their face." Avery's eyes flickered. That flicker saved Eleanor Whitmore's life, but it nearly cost Jonah Reed his. By morning, the story was buried. The hospital cited administrative confusion. Eleanor was moved to a private wing. Security doubled. Jonah was told, politely but firmly, to go home and forget what he'd seen. He tried, but then he learned about the funeral. The billionaire's funeral. The same funeral where Eleanor Whitmore was supposedly lying in a coffin, while Jonah knew, with every bone in his body, that she was still alive somewhere. And if they were burying a coffin, it meant someone wanted her permanently silenced. Jonah didn't own a suit. He didn't belong among marble angels and whispered condolences. But on the morning of the funeral, he put on his cleanest shirt, his city-issued jacket, and followed the procession like a shadow. When the priest began the final prayer, Jonah ran and shouted. Chaos erupted. Security rushed him. Guests cried out. Cameras swung. Jonah was tackled inches from the coffin, gravel biting into his cheek. He didn't stop yelling, "Eleanor Whitmore is alive." Someone screamed for the police, then a new voice cut through the noise, "Open it." The voice was old, sharp, and carried authority forged by decades of command. Margaret Whitmore, Eleanor's estranged sister, stepped forward, her cane striking the ground with a decisive thud. Her eyes, so like Eleanor's, were narrowed, calculating. "Open the coffin," Margaret repeated. Now. Dr. Avery turned pale. "This is highly inappropriate." "I don't care," Margaret snapped. "If there is even a chance my sister is alive, I will not have her buried under lies." The lid was opened. The coffin was empty. The scandal exploded across the world. Stock prices crashed. The prices crashed. Investigations launched. Dr. Avery disappeared that same afternoon. Whitmore Global's board went into emergency session. And Jonah Reed, garbage collector, nobody, found himself at the center of the biggest mystery of the decade. Eleanor Whitmore woke up 2 days later. She was weak, confused, but alive. When Jonah was brought into her room, she stared at him for a long time before speaking. "You smell like diesel," she said faintly. Jonah laughed, then cried, then wiped his face with his sleeve, embarrassed. "You saved my life," Eleanor said. Do you know why they tried to kill me?" Jonah shook his head. Eleanor's eyes hardened. Because I was about to expose them." The truth unraveled slowly, painfully. Eleanor had discovered that several executives, including Dr. Avery, were siphoning billions through fake charities and shell companies. When she confronted them, they acted first. They administered a drug that slowed her heart to near undetectable levels, declared her dead, planned to bury the evidence, literally. Jonah was the flaw in their perfect plan. The challenges came fast and brutal. Jonah was threatened, followed, offered money to stay silent. When that failed, he was framed for trespassing and theft, his name dragged through tabloids. His ex-wife begged him to stop, but Eleanor stood by him. "I built my empire on numbers," she told him. "You reminded me it survives because of people. Together they testified. Files were leaked. Arrests followed. Dr. Avery was caught trying to flee the country. The board was dismantled. Billions were recovered. Months later, Eleanor Whitmore held a press conference, not in a marble hall, but in a city sanitation yard. She stood beside Jonah Reed in his orange vest. "This man does a job most of us refuse to see," Eleanor said. "Yet he saw the truth when everyone else looked away. Let this be a reminder. Dignity is not measured by wealth or title, but by courage." Jonah didn't know where to look. Cameras flashed. Applause thundered. For the first time in his life, Jonah felt seen. Years later, Jonah still collected garbage, but now he also ran a foundation with Eleanor, funding workers in invisible jobs. Janitors, cleaners, collectors. People asked him how it felt to stop a billionaire's funeral. Jonah always shrugged. "I didn't stop a funeral," he said. "I listened when something felt wrong." And somewhere in a world that often buried truth under convenience, that lesson took root. Sometimes the person who saves a life isn't the one in the spotlight. Sometimes it's the one willing to open the bag everyone else is afraid to touch.